Go ahead. Sure. Please rise. The April 12th, 2023 special meeting of Haliburton County Council is now in session. Warden Liz Danielson presiding.
Please be seated. We'll call the meeting to order. We respectfully acknowledge that the County of Haliburton is located on Treaty 20 Mississauga territory and in the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations. We acknowledge the shared presence of Indigenous nations throughout the area and recognize its original inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda for today? Councillors Fury and Carter.
Moved by Councillor Fury, seconded by Councillor Carter. Be it resolved that the agenda for the April 12th, 2023 special meeting of Haliburton County Council be hereby approved.
All in favor? That's carried. Is there any notice of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Hearing none. First up, and the only item of business today really is the application by Harbor Holdings on Grass Lake. The first portion of our discussion, you will see that we all have the correspondence that was submitted with respect to the application and the responses from Mr. Wilson's planner. Sorry. I guess if you would like to speak on your application, Mr. Wilson, and respond to any concerns or issues that have been brought up with respect to this, we welcome you to come forward and do so.
Excuse me. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Good afternoon, Warden Danielson and Council. Thank you for allowing me to make a short presentation today. As most of you know, I have lived and worked in Haliburton all my life. I have owned and developed a number of properties in the county and have worked with municipal and county planning departments since the mid-1970s. I bought the Peninsula Road property in 2003, and over the next 10 years, I worked on making it more desirable for future development. It's almost 2 years since we made this application and our proposal became public. Up until now, I have been relatively quiet throughout the entire planning process. I have relied on my planner, Mr. Usher, to do most of the talking for me. I haven't written any op-eds to the paper or any letters to the editor, nor have I responded publicly to the many verbal attacks directed at me personally. I was confident that the facts were on my side, so I chose to let them speak for themselves. Unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation mixed in with the facts, so I feel compelled to clarify a few things. Mr. Usher has already submitted a response to many of the statements made by the Friends of Grass Lake at the February council meeting. Everything I'm about to say is already included in your online packages of information, so I will try to be brief and concise. I will be happy to answer any questions when I'm finished. At the February County Council meeting, the Friends of Grass Lake said on several occasions that I undertook site alterations, including building the pond and placing fill without proper approvals. That simply is not true. I was in continuous communication with Tracy Allison of the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, Chris Windover of the M&R in Minden, Graham Cameron, species at risk biologist, M&R in Bancroft, and Michael Longpre, Ministry of the Environment. All of these agencies approved what I was doing and indicated that no permits were required. This history is documented in detail in a letter from Tony Usher to Dysart, December 7th, 2021, that's already in your agenda. The letters and emails between the agencies and me that back this up were provided to Dysart along with that letter. I should also add that all the site alteration work was completed by 2012 and really doesn't have anything to do with the current proposal. Contrary to another statement made at the last meeting, the Department of Fisheries and Oceans has confirmed that I did not place any fill in the lake. And this fact was further verified during the site inspection last April with the current representative of that department. The statement that I trucked fill into the property after dark is absolute nonsense. That simply did not happen. Most of the fill that I needed came from excavating the pond, and the rest came from a nearby construction rock blast. That was way back in 2004 when they built the Independent, or from licensed gravel pits. That's just another example of misinformation that has continually been spread by some of the objectors. The same is true about the statements that I cut trees improperly. The Friends of Grass Lake delegates made reference to an extensive grassed area that I created that, in their view, promoted a population of geese and afforded little protection to the adjacent wetland. What they did not mention was my formal commitment to adhere strictly to the recommendations as set forth in my environmental impact study / wetland site assessment to convert these grassed open areas to naturalized buffers within 1 year of receiving planning approvals by planting a minimum of 200 shrubs and trees within the currently open areas identified as buffers. The report further describes in detail the manner in which this naturalized buffer must be created as a no maintenance area with pathways and walkways no wider than 3 meters. All of these points that I've made so far are addressed in detail in the material Tony Usher provided that's already in your agenda. I'm going to be very brief here, but in summing up, I would like to stress 2 additional points. Firstly, in 2019, before I asked Tony to initiate formal pre-consultation with the planning staff, I met with County Planner Charles E. White and municipal planners Jeff Isles and Sue Harrison to obtain their thoughts on my development options. I told them at the time that I would prefer to propose a medium density residential development, but would consider single family residential lots if that was their preference. Ms. White told me in no uncertain terms that the county wanted a medium density residential development on this property, given that it's on the sanitary sewers and given that it's located within the Haliburton Village urban policy area. She said that single family residential lots would be an underutilization of the property. Now, I know she was the planner, she wasn't county council, but normally you go to the planners first to see what they want you to do and try to accommodate. The second thing.
We have since verified the discussion with Chelsea White as well.
Oh, okay, thank you. The second and probably the most important thing that I want to say today is that I commissioned experienced, qualified professionals to undertake all the necessary reports and studies. They worked in unison with the municipal and county planning departments and their peer review consultants to come up with a modified proposal that is now supported in its entirety by both planning departments. The only professional submissions that the opponents have provided are planning opinions from DM Wills, and Mr. Usher has responded to those in some of his letters that you have. I have yet to see anything from a qualified professional that refutes or contradicts anything in the reports that I've submitted. As you know, our current application is the first stage of a two-stage process. Right now, my focus is on making sure that the first stage is done properly so that I can be proud of what's eventually developed. Although I may not be involved in the second stage, I will have control who I sell to, and I won't be selling to anyone, including the lot that I propose to donate to Places for People, unless I approve their development proposal. So that's really all I have to say. I'd like to thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak, and I would be pleased to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Wilson? Mr. Fury.
I know there was a condition about the water agreement with the your neighbor there that was outstanding. How is that?
Yeah, okay. Mr. Stone might be best to help me address this, because the negotiation between the vet's lawyer was done through Mr. Usher, but I'll fill you in on what I think is happening, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but my hydrogeologist met with the vet's hydrogeologist, and they hashed out a sequence of things, tests that I have to do to prove that we're not affecting her well. And we've agreed on that. Now the lawyer that spoke at the last meeting is drawing an agreement that obliges me to do what the two Hydro-G people have agreed upon. And I've seen it. I have not seen the agreement, but I've seen what I have to do, and I'm quite all right with it. I am confident that we will be signing an agreement here in the next week or two, but there is an amendment in the whole application. And again, I may not be stating this correctly, that obliges me to enter into this agreement. And the holding condition will not be lifted until I do. And like I say, we're that far from having an agreement. We've already talked about what's in it. I just haven't seen the formal document.
Go ahead.
Would Mr. Stone care to comment on that?
I think you'll do that as part of
You'll do that,
your
yeah.
report.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm sure he can address that probably more adequately than I did.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Wilson? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time and your clarification.
Thank you.
So the next part of this application today is a report from Mr. Stone.
Thank you, Madam Warren, to the rest of council. The report before you today is really building on the discussion that was entertained by County Council in February. A couple of things just to highlight what was presented to County Council in February, which is important as you consider what you might do today, is that this is a local official plan amendment, so it's amending Dysart official plan. And so when you look at the Planning Act, it goes through the local process. Their council deals with it. They engage the public, and they hold a public meeting that's statutory under the Planning Act. And that actually happened last September, September 29th to be correct on that. And so I just want to reiterate that our role, I should say your role as county council, is really the approval authority to look at the actions of the municipality of Dysart and their council, and did they achieve what's required of them in the Planning Act. So building on that, staff did present a very fulsome report, and we actually circulated it as well. We're not necessarily required to do so under the Planning Act, but we did so knowing that this was of interest to the community. And there was a number of comments that were received at the time, and they were included in the February report. Building on the discussion that happened at the February meeting, there was some interest from one particular stakeholder about water concerns, their well being impacted over the long term. And it was suggested by staff that we could look into the possibility of a special policy, if you want to say a modification to the application. The delegate spoke to an amendment, but it actually, in the function that county council has, it can choose to approve modify and approve or refuse. In this regard, the discussion was centered around adding a particular special policy that would address the concerns about water supply on the neighboring lot. Staff took that direction and began in earnest to have discussions with the proponent's agent, as well as the concerned party. And then it was vetted through the municipal planning staff at Dysart. And the special policy that's included in the staff report today is a reflection of those efforts and basically consensus building amongst the two parties. The effect of the special policy, as much as the delegate did say, it will require assurances by the proponent moving forward, whether it's this particular property owner or the next property owner, to guarantee or ensure, it's a better word, ensure that there will be no adverse impacts on water supplies off-site. And how that gets implemented, first of all, it's a special policy that appears on the schedules within Dysart's official plan. So there'll be an actual indicator by a polygon around the subject property. And then there'll also be a special policy text included in the special policy section within Dysart's official plan that actually describes what the requirements are of the owners going forward to ensure that there's no adverse water impacts on water supply offsite. And as I said, it was vetted amongst the neighbor's lawyer, as well as the consulting team. Tony Usher led that charge, and then presented to municipal staff, and they're understanding the effect of that. Should council think that's an appropriate thing to do, which is to modify the application and approve it as modified, then you'll see in the recommendation in the staff report that staff is asking council to direct us to present that modification back to Dysart Council for their endorsement. And if they endorse it, then we'll get a reciprocal resolution to that effect, allowing staff then to present that to county council, and then we can move forward with a decision to approve the amendment as modified. So that's very, very high level planning talk to you, and I'm very happy to answer your questions in that regard.
Questions for Mr. Stone? Councillor Carter.
Actually, two questions. So in the proposal, the splitting of the lots, there's some indication that, you know, one lot is going to be for 30 units, and I don't know exact numbers, but just for the sake of an example. So if this present Mr. Wilson decides to develop it, or he sells it and it goes to somebody else, somebody comes to do the development and they look at it and say, you know, this could be 33 units, okay, as opposed to 30. What could you just explain a little bit of what's the process that would happen then? Would that all be handled at Dysart, or does that all circulate back through here again?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Warden, to the rest of council. So what you're asking or inquiring about is really the zoning regulations that would apply per lot.
Right.
And as you know, municipal jurisdiction on zoning lies with Dysart. So at some point, the zoning will actually fall down and regulate the various lots in there. And if they specify 30 units, but as you say, in 5-10 years, somebody comes along and says, you know what, I can get an extra 5 more units there, then they would have to go through a new zoning amendment process with Dysart Council.
And my
Continue.
second question is, so if I understand it, so if this is approved now, then any subsequent steps in this whole process before a building is actually erected is all with Dysart. So if it's, you know, site plan control, or, you know, control over wastewater, or sort of water runoff and things like that, that's all with that's all with Dysart. Is that?
Through you, Madam Warden, to the rest of the council, save and accept the creation of the lots. So lot
Okay.
creation is still in the purview of the county, and Land Division Committee will deal with those
Okay.
at the appropriate time.
Okay, so just to understand
Mhm.
our role here today. I mean, from what it sounds like you're saying is that you have served as our representative, if you will, or our qualified expert to determine whether or not Dysart has proceeded properly up to this point. And you are now recommending to us, you have told us that you feel that they have, and you're recommending that we approve this. And that's really the limit of what we're talking about here today. Is that exactly right?
Through you, Madam Warden, that is correct. So the county council acts as the approval authority, and you rely on your professional advice from your staff team to do that. I would say that it's a very collaborative effort that we do here. And as I mentioned, to get to this point has involved Dysart municipal staff as well as the proponent's consultant. And in the case of the special policy, the neighbor and their lawyer. So it's been very collaborative.
Councillor Rail.
Along the same line of questioning, there was some concern about water runoff when we were talking about this back, and that's because of the number of units and number of vehicles that will be going in and out. And obviously, because it's in the wintertime, there's going to be a need to salt or sand or some kind of we're not going to slip and cause an accident. The control of that runoff water, is that something that falls under our jurisdiction, or does that fall under Dysart's? And to your knowledge, has it been addressed?
Through you, Madam Warden, to the rest of the council. So the first answer would be it's Dysart is responsible for stormwater management review. And so in terms of finally addressed, no, it has not been. It's been typically when you go through a high level planning process like we're doing right now, although this particular application's been supported with some very in-depth technical documents. I usually refer to it as a functional servicing review that happens at this level. So, but when it comes to the actual formulation of the site through preparing actual site plan drawings, that's when they will fine tune and finalize any sort of site stormwater management controls. In the business of development, there is a very good catalog of best management practices as it relates to stormwater management. It's been in circulation for a number of years in the province, and it would be the responsibility of the on-site engineer who designs those to make sure that any sort of stormwater management controls are the best they are as it relates to the adjoining natural features. So that will be reviewed, prepared for the benefit of Dysart planning staff to review.
Go ahead.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, that's a piece that's too preliminary at this point in time and would fall into when a proposed project was actually defined, submitted for approval, and all of those considerations would be part of that approval. Right. And they would have to meet the requirements when that approval, in order to get that approval.
Through you, Madam Warren, just a slight variation to your understanding, as I would say that the environmental impact study that was presented for Dysart's council to review is not too preliminary. What I would say that it is a supporting document that verifies there's no expectation for adverse impact on the abutting. It's the technical details in terms of how to ensure that has not yet been prepared with any sort of site plan drawings.
Councillor Fury.
I think we've proven that we had a lot of input in this particular project, and I'd like to move a resolution that we approve the official plan amendment as presented with the modification suggested for the water by Mr. Stone. I don't know how he wants to word that, but I would so move that.
I still have a question.
Okay, oh, sorry, I'm sorry. I didn't mean
Comments
cut
to
you
make.
off.
We'll get there.
Okay,
I just want to make absolutely sure that is what we're about to do based on what I see as a recommendation in Mr. Stone's report, that we are in fact approving this application, or it's being proposed that we actually approve the application based on the modifications that you've recommended. Is that correct?
It's you're modifying the application and it's sort of a stepped process in the sense that you've approved a modification for it, but you need Dysart Council's endorsement of that modification. So
that's what it basically is.
Okay, but I thought that we were actually going to approve or disapprove the application today, subject to conditions, and that's not what I'm hearing. You're saying that there's another step, it has to go to Dysart and then
That's
come
right.
back to us?
yes, that's correct, because it's a modification to the amendment application. It's not considered a condition like you might have in a consent application.
Can we not approve it subject to the receipt of those modifications from Dysart? It just keeps going on and on. I think that, at some point, we have to, I hate to use Mr. Kennedy's fish or cut bait, but I think that there's a point where we need to do that. So there is no way for us to approve it today.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the rest of the council, yes, you can approve it without the modification.
But if we want the modification, can we not approve it subject to the modification being approved by Dysart? So our approval is conditional on that.
Well, I would, my experience is that you approve it subject to the modification and you send it to Dysart Council for their resolution. So I would say, yes, you can do that, but it would be subject to, in terms of it being in full on force and effect, no, we couldn't issue a decision on this yet. Again, it would have to be after Dysart is in agreement with the modification.
Councillor Fury.
So if we did that today and we had it approved by Dysart Council and came back here, that would be the end, would it not?
It would be,
Yeah,
yes.
so let's do it that, we can do it that way.
Okay, I just kind of understood that it was going to be.
Yeah, well, it will be done if we do it that way.
Yeah,
Not
you're
today.
It'll just have to come back from Dysart Council here to the planning, not to this council. That it was
At
approved.
which point we would then approve it. That's what I'm hearing from Mr. Stone.
We don't need to bring it back to this council.
But that's what Mr. Stone is saying. If we're going to have modifications, it needs to come back to this council for final approval.
Is that what you're saying?
That is what he's saying.
that is the recommendation. Yeah. But as I said, you can actually approve, you can choose to approve it with the modification, or you can approve it without the modification, which is the amendment would stand as submitted by Dysart Council.
That's why I asked the question. I wanted to
Yeah.
be sure before we went further that, Councillor Rail.
I think I'm confused.
Sure.
Okay, so just want to put it out there. Our resolution is going to be crystal clear on what needs to be done.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's either going to be you did it or you didn't. There's going to be nothing in the middle. It's the only options that are there. So they go and they do it. So why does it have to come back here? If they're not going to do it, then we don't have to worry about it either because it's not coming back here. One way or the other, it's going to be decided today that the county is okay, provided that Dysart does what they say they're going to do. Once Dysart has committed and said, yes, I agree with council, that's what we're going to do. I don't know why it's not over. I can't understand why it's not done.
That's my problem too. Councillor Carter.
Well, I think what Mr. Stone is saying is that, at this point today, we have no idea whether Dysart is going to agree to that change or not. If they agree to it, then it comes back to us and we approve it. If they don't agree with it, or if they want to modify it or whatever, then there's a different issue. So the thing is that I think following the law, you sort of can't pre-approve what you expect somebody else is going to do. It's unfortunate, but it's just, if Dysart agrees, it's a 30-second discussion at the next opportunity.
Because at this point, we will have endorsed it based on receiving it. I just kind of wanted it done one way or the other today, but anyway, are there any other questions or concerns? I do just want to say that I know that that there will be, assuming that we approve this application, which I believe we will, I know that there are going to be people that are disappointed and unhappy about the decision. And as is the case quite often with many decisions that we make, unfortunately. And do I personally think that this is the best location for this kind of development? Maybe not. But I have to say that we have all the planning reports, we have all the recommendations, we have all the peer reviews, we have all the support from every planner that we have dealt with, and we have an urgent need for housing. And personally, I have to endorse this project moving ahead. Anyway, so we have a resolution ahead of us. Would you like to hear the resolution before we vote on it?
So be it, be it resolved that the planning report PLN 24-2023 concerning file number 4624-OPA-001, which is in relation to official plan amendment number 1 to the municipality of Dysart et al. Official plan, be received by Haliburton County Council for information. That Haliburton County Council endorses the recommended policy and schedule modifications to the adopted official plan amendment number 1 to the municipality of Dysart et al. Official plan attached as appendix 3 to the planning report PL 24-2023, and that Haliburton County Council directs staff to obtain a resolution from the council of the municipality of Dysart et al. That they endorse the proposed modifications to the official plan amendment number 1 to the municipality of Dysart et al. Official plan that was adopted by the council for the municipality of Dysart et al. Official plan on September 29th, 2022 via bylaw number 2022-97.
Could I have a mover? Councillor Fury, seconded by Councillor Shell. You've heard the resolution. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Mr. Stone. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Could I have a mover and a seconder for the confirming bylaw for today? Councillors Burton and Ryle.
Moved by Councillor Burton, seconded by Councillor Ryle, be it resolved that bylaw 4173 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the April 12th, 2023 special meeting of Haliburton County Council be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of corporation be affixed.
All in favor? That's carried. Could I have a motion to adjourn? Councillor McKechnie. Councillor Ryle.
Moved by Councillor McKechnie, seconded by Councillor Ryle, be it resolved that the April 12th, 2023 special meeting of Haliburton County Council be adjourned.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you.